three Texas novelists here tonight. We have Elizabeth Harris, Thomas McNeely, and Mary Helen Speck. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm super excited to hear them all read. We're going to start the evening with Elizabeth Harris. Elizabeth Harris's novel Mayhem, Three Wives of a Woman, winner of the Gival Press Novel Award and an Austin Chronicle Top Read of 2015, was a finalist for the Texas Institute of Letters Jesse Jones Award for Best Work of Fiction. Her first collection of stories, The Ant Generator, was winner of the University of Iowa Press John Simmons Prize. She taught fiction writing and modern literature for a number of years at the University of Texas at Austin. Elizabeth.
Well, it's nice to see you all, and such a lot of nice faces. This novel, Mayhem, Three Lives of a Woman, dramatizes a violent crime. Two men castrate a neighbor. And the novel concerns itself with the causes and consequences of this crime, as experienced by the young wife of one of those men. These include several gender crimes committed against her that destroy her marriage and change her life completely. A short chapter I'm going to read appears early in the novel and foreshadows some of this, including the life of an outcast that will be imposed on her afterwards. But in this episode, she's 10 years old and is surrounded by her family. On the morning she had made the potato salad for the picnic, she was minding Liesl, who was 6 then, and Greta, who was 3, because Mommy was nursing Bee, who was the baby. They had been sent out into the yard to cut branches of bright pink azalea to take to the cemetery. And when they were through, they were to go inside, wash, and dress in the spring dresses Mommy had sewed them for homecoming. Homecoming in 1919 in Iron Rock was a day of somber ceremony unconnected to schools or football games. A day celebrated instead of the impossible Decoration Day, that Southern memorial for the Civil War dead, or the even more impossible Federal Memorial Day, because there had been men in Central Texas not 60 years before who had refused to swear the oath of allegiance to the Confederacy. Some had been shot or hanged by Confederate vigilantes for trees people could still point out. Some had escaped to fight for the Union. A sizable party had fought their pursuers on their way to Mexico, and some, forced to surrender, had been massacred by militia. Many other men of Central Texas, seeing no difficulty or no practical choice over a confederacy dedicated to slaveholding, had fought for it. How to memorialize communally such various dead? In the future elsewhere of easy destruction, their descendants might have blown up public places in the neighborhoods of the old enemy. At homecoming, each family joined its neighbors to clean up the cemetery, decorate such graves as they chose to, and share a quiet picnic, which seemed to be mainly about the common experience of having had ancestors they did not choose and being themselves subject to die. The telephone rang from the wall in the hallway, and the children in the yard heard Poppy answer it and stopped piling up branches of azalea. They picked at the insect-like antennae of the flowers and waited. The telephone often meant bad news. When Poppy came out onto the porch, he announced, "We will not go to the cemetery today. Uncle Jakob found a dead woman under the brush arbor in the cemetery." What difference did that make, Evelyn would remember thinking. The cemetery was all dead people. And about the potato salad she had labored over. The brush arbor, which provided shade for burial services, was where the tables for the picnic were set up. Later, Poppy and Gus and Fred and Kurt did go to the cemetery with the men and older boys of other households for a few hours' work. But women and children did not go, and most children were kept from knowing more that day. They found out in time, as other boys told the news, confidentially or cruelly. You know what they found? And other children repeated it, they say. Jakob Schlegel had volunteered that year to haul sawhorses and boards for the picnic table out to the brush arbor and set them up. Early in the morning, he and 2 teenage sons, one of them to become a local historian, had loaded the heavy boards and sawhorses onto a mule wagon and driven out to the cemetery. From the reddish clay of the cemetery road that looped around on treeless bottomland, the man and the 2 boys could see something on the ground under the brush arbor. It looked like a bundle of clothes, Ernest Schlegel would write, roped there at the corner to one of the uprights of the frame. Father was grim. "Whoa," he said, "whoa. Stay in the wagon." Father got down and went in under the brush arbor and stood over the bundle, waving flies from his face. And when we stood up in the wagon, we saw it was a person. He reached out with the butt of his driving whip and lifted long hair, and we saw it was a woman. And he took off his hat and held it over his heart, as if at graveside at funerals, and we did the same with ours. The ground around the body was dark. "A woman has been murdered," he said when he came back, and that there could be no picnic there that day. He drove to town straight to the undertaker's, and we sat there in the wagon while he went in. We did not know any more until he drove to the pastor's, and the pastor came with us to the church, where in the backyard the grass was long and green with the spring, and we got down and scythed it. Then we unloaded the tables and set them up there. Other men stopped by to help, and we heard them talking. The woman had been whipped to death. She had been in a family way, as they said in those days. Father had seen the baby in her belly, which was cut open by the whip. He had not, in that moment when he lifted her hair from her face, recognized her. The body was laid out at the undertaker's, the indentation of a wedding ring said to have marked her finger, and all day people were asked to go and look in hopes of identifying her. But if anybody knew who she was, they did not say. Though she or the man who had killed her, nobody doubted it was a man, must have had some connection around Iron Rock, or why take her to the cemetery on the night before homecoming to kill her? A little older, Evelyn would ponder that question with other girls. What the man thought the woman had done, and whether she had done it, or most horribly of all, hadn't. But for a long while, what Evelyn would remember most sharply about homecoming 1919 would be her disappointment at the evening, and her discovery that evening, her disappointment of the morning, and her discovery that evening at the picnic held behind the church. In the spring chill that sunset floated down onto them like a cold, damp cloth, she and her sisters and the other girls had been playing the sing-song. Go in and out the windows, twirling between the arcs of joined hands, moving through the altar air, as we have done this day. Collapsed warm into a wooden folding chair, Evelyn heard a woman muse to Mommy, and nobody with the slightest idea who. I've seen that deep-browed look, Mommy said, with the eyes close together. It was, the 2 women agreed, a look some people had. Mommy said. So that Evelyn, who had never slept in a bed alone or been long out of sight or sound of familiar others, sprawled back amid the whine of early mosquitoes and sought the night sky with the seven sisters, trying to imagine dying where she knew nobody and nobody knew her.